Hey, everybody. So we're live now. This is our first live artist spotlight that the Northwest Minnesota Arts Council is putting on. And so we're here with some great people. So we've got Kristen Eggerling is here, and myself, Trey Everett. We both work with the Arts Council. And then our two guests, we have Ross Hier, who is our featured artist. There, Ross is waving, and we're going to be talking a lot to Ross. And then we have Dr. John Loegering, who's a professor at the University of Minnesota Crookston, a bird expert. Ross is also a bird expert. And so we are really trying to showcase regional artists. And like I said, this is our first time trying this, doing this. We hope to do many more. This is live, but we're also going to be recording this. And so it will be archived on our website and other places, so we can watch this. You can watch this at other times as well. And so I just want to welcome you. Thank you, Ross and John, for being here and participating in this. Because of COVID, we're all like at our home computers, but working together to make this happen. So I want to just start, Ross, with asking you a few questions. And first of all, I just want to talk about your artwork. So we have this exhibit at Northland Community and Technical College in Thief River Falls. There's a neat gallery there on campus, and the Arts Council has galleries throughout the year. And the current gallery is birds. And Ross, you're the main show there. We've got a number of artists there, but you take up, I don't know, 3/4 of the exhibit. Yes, yeah. So, and all of your art, all of the art is about birds, but yours in particular is a number of your pieces, some old, but a lot recent artwork of many watercolors you've done about birds. And I was just wondering if you could start out just telling us a little bit about how you got involved with painting birds.
Well, it's a direct response to my love affair with birds from the time I was just a very, very small kid, 4 or 5 years of age. The librarian in my hometown of Jackson, Minnesota, Margaret Gillespie was her name, first generation Scots woman. She was a librarian in my hometown, and she lived next door to us. And Margaret and I played dominoes at least weekly. I don't even know if I remember how to play dominoes now, but we played for sugar cubes. I blame her for my sweet tooth too. But at age 5, she gave me this book. It's on my shelf behind me here. Birds Every Child Should Know. And it's a thick book, but it covers most of the American species and kind of that. It was written in the late 1800s, so it's a different style of prose, of course, but it just set me off on, a lifelong love affair with bird life. And there was a model company called New World Models when I was a kid. The local Ben Franklin carried them. There was about 26 different models. They were plastic. You put them together and you painted them. And I did all 26 by the time I was about 10. And I'm not saying they're all that great, but my mother had my dad put like a dish board around the kitchen. And all those models sat up there until I left beyond college, So that was kind of my way of understanding feathering. And I don't do that kind of detailed painting, but I was telling Kristen before we came on air, that Fabergé made unbelievable eggs, jewelry eggs, but I'll wager anybody can't make a hummingbird. I mean, the beauty of birds is just beyond belief. And, what we see as colors as humans in a spread wing of a bird or something, a blue jay, technically, correct me, John, if I'm wrong, but is not really blue. But it's what the human eye sees as light is reflected off feather tracks, and that gets pretty complex. But these feathers, these scales that evolved from reptile scales, it still mind boggles me. And I handled enough ducks early in my career that sometimes we'd catch what we called a bat-winged hen mallard late in September, October, because she had spent so much of an effort trying to, nest and re-nest and maybe re-nest a third time, that she didn't go into molt until late fall. And so you'd catch this bat-winged hen, and her wing would just be these blue quilled primaries. And, you looked at her and you thought, you're not going to get out of here this winter. You're not going to make it because your feather quills are just brand new right now. But you look at these quills and you think, how does this incredible architecture of barbules and barbs come out of that? And it still fascinates me to think about that. And when you see birds preening, they're taking care of, like the hair I have left, they're like pruning their, preening and pruning. They're a remarkable covering, and there's just so much diversity, from penguins that fly through the water and don't get cold and subpolar temperatures, to birds that hardly have any feathering so they can let go of the heat. It's just a remarkable group of animals.
Yeah. Well, and Ross, tell us a little bit about your, you obviously know a lot about birds. Tell us a little bit about your occupation, what some of your interests have been and are.
Yeah. Well, I knew from a young age that I wanted to get into this field called wildlife. That's about all you know when you're 16, 17, 18. And, I did all right in high school, I guess. I just knew when I left high school, I had to have the ability to study, organize and study. I wasn't a 4.0 student in high school. I had too many other things working on my brain. And, but I did go to the University at St. Paul, and then I went on to do some graduate work at New Mexico State. But I was so very lucky to get into the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources section of wildlife. And in the first 8 years, I lived in Bemidji and worked on numerous duck species, mostly mallards, ringneck ducks, and lesser scaup. And I literally handled thousands of birds. Got to see so much unique stuff up close, and did scientific papers and that type of life. And then I jumped over to management and ended up back out on the prairie, where I feel much more at home. And Leela and I have been here since 1988 in Crookston. So and the prairie just offers so much bird life. I'll call friends in the woods when a big crane migration or swans are moving out here, and they go, "Oh, we haven't seen or heard anything." Well, it's because, especially northwest Minnesota, the beach ridges, when you fly above the beach lines, they look like, highway markers to a bird, and they definitely use them. And then the abundance and mixture of grass and agricultural cropland and all the habitats we have, tremendous diversity in northwest Minnesota. And that's what, has kept us here, and we love it up here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you just tell us a little bit about what kind of art you prefer, and kind of a little bit about your technique, your inspiration, just just kind of inform us a little bit about your artwork.
I think if any young person has a interest in, say, two-dimensional art, so it's something on a flat surface, putting pigments onto something, you immediately gravitate to watercolors. Why? Because your parents can afford, or you can, from paper out money to buy some, bad watercolor paper. And, you don't understand what good and bad is at that time, and a box of pigments and some, again, bad brushes, but brushes nonetheless. And the stuff is so spontaneous and quick drying that you find yourself being able to put ideas that are in your head onto paper in just a matter of seconds sometimes. And that's how I fell in love with the watercolors. I never had any classes, or we didn't have much for art classes growing up in school, a little bit, but I tried oils once when I was in graduate school, and I left out. I took a class with a teacher, a workshop, whatever you want to call it. I left after the first night. It just was so slow, and there's no spontaneity to it for me. And I don't think of myself as an impatient person, but maybe I am. And the oils, they never dry, even in the desert. It took them weeks to dry, and that wasn't for me. So I concentrated on watercolors, and, just people ask me or tell me, you're a watercolor artist. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand it yet. I've told this to many people. They look at a painting of mine and they go, wow, look at the sky on that one. That's just amazing. I said, yeah, I have no idea how I did that. And could I do it again? I don't know. I don't think so. And I look at other people's watercolors. One of my modern favorites is Andy Evenson from Hastings. And he's a looser style, which I'm trying to loosen my style a bit, but you just marvel at the mixtures of the pigments on wet. And by that, I mean the paper's wet and pigments are still wet, so they bleed into each other. And it's all about experience, As an example about that, as far as experience, I taught a watercolor workshop once in Fertile, Minnesota, just south of Crookston here. And I tend to wet my paper a lot in most paintings, sometimes painting on dry paper, but mostly on wet paper to start with anyway. And so I said to the class, okay, let's wet the paper. And I walked around the room. Well, 3 of them had Lake Huron and 1 of them had Lake Ontario on their paper. It was like a ½ inch of water. And it never dawned on me that this is such an experience type of artistry that you can't just expect people to jump in and understand what I don't even understand, but my body somehow does it. So, there's a lot of other outlets, Trey, that I love to do. I make, wooden working decoys, not so much working anymore, but I still like to make them. Fish carvings painted with acrylics, or signs for families that, just get married, the Johnsons or whatever, maybe with some birds sitting under them, or all that stuff I kind of view as just a fun diversion, but there's so much art out there that a person could do. You'd have to have 10 lifetimes if you're able to do it. I mean, it's like somebody that can solve math problems that I can't even write. They would love to have 10 lifetimes to delve into that particular love affair. So, but I do tend to concentrate on watercolors. There was a period of time where I made these, what Shrinky Dink plastic is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that. It looks like a piece of typewriter paper. It's thin plastic. You cut it out larger than it's going to be. You put it in the oven and it shrinks down to, tiny things. There was a period of time where I was making earrings and pins and brooches, and I would, give them to be auctioned off at like Wildlife Society fundraisers or whatever. And I still have people come up and ask me, I've got a pair of your little solid owl shrinky dink earrings. Would you make some more of those? And I guess I haven't made them for 15 or 20 years, so again, there's just not enough time if you want to do other things in life too. But
Yeah.
it's a love affair. It's not a job for me.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I really sympathize with artists that are trying to live just with their artwork. It's got to really be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been to your studio, which is where you're at right now. Is that correct? And
yeah,
you can tell it is a love affair.
Well, one of the best gifts I ever got was from Dan Swiderski, who, of course, John knows very well. He's former prof at UMC. He gave me this massive angled, it's made out of solid oak, drafting table. And I don't think it's ever going to leave 5113 Holly Avenue, because I don't even know how we got it in the studio, first of all. But we were younger for sure. I don't think I could lift it off the floor now, but it's been really nice versus I used to paint just on an old flat door, that I put up on blocks. So this has a bit of an angle to it, and you can put lots of junk on it. So
yeah,
that was a nice gift that kind of kick-started my studio. Just until recently, Trey, when I say to Leland, I used to say I'm going up to the guest bedroom because it's our third bedroom in our house. And just recently I started calling it a studio because it seemed somewhat arrogant that Ross Hier could actually have a studio. And it is just a bedroom with art stuff in it, so.
Yeah.
But it is where I paint most of the time.
Yeah. Nice.
I do paint under artificial lights a lot. I don't know if that's good or bad. I've never painted outside, if you can believe it, plein air or whatever the proper term is, plein air.
Mm-hmm.
But I do hope to start trying that, because you watch plein air artists on YouTube and it's a whole different beast for a watercolor artist because everything's drying so much more quickly. You really have to force yourself to work even faster than I often work anyway. So it would be a good experience, and I do intend to start doing that.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I want to switch over to John, real quick. A couple of questions. First of all, how do you know Ross? How do you two know each other? How did you first meet? And then, John, the second question, tell us about how you became interested in birds yourself.
Well, Trey, let's see. I'm trying to think when I met Ross. I arrived in Crookston in 2000. I'm pretty sure we hadn't met before then because I was traversing the country in graduate school and all that sort of thing. So it wasn't long after my arrival that Swiderski probably introduced us, and Dan Swiderski's been a monumental figure in probably both of our lives. And I know how you got that up there. With Swiderski involved, there's always a way, and he'll figure out a way. There's no question about it.
Well, we could spend a whole hour on that topic. So.
Precisely, yeah. And I think we all have the stories to tell about it. So I met Ross real soon after arriving here and beginning my job at UMC, and he was generous throughout his career to take some students out on field trips and show them the prairies and sort of give them that, as you can see, his love affair is with more than just art. It's with his with his work and with his, love of the prairies and what they have to offer. There's nothing like taking a bunch of students for a couple-hour walk on the prairie and just having Ross relay and lay out the landscape in a way that that maybe they haven't looked at it before. Really revealing sort of revealing the obvious. It's sitting there in plain sight, and it's just a matter of trying to coach them to think about things in a certain way, or take a look at this and see how this works with that. Just taking a little walk with Ross was always a really enjoyable experience, because students discovered things that they had seen so many times before, but now they understood. So, over the course of many years, we've gone on lots of field trips together, for sure. It's funny. Ross has had a love affair with birds for a long time. I came to birds fairly late, in the sense that, I was always an outdoors person. My father enjoyed the outdoors. He took, we were kids. We went fishing a lot, and I was very active in the scouting troop in our local community. So I was camped and did all sorts of things outdoors, and that was really my passion. I enjoyed that. But the reality is I really didn't know what a wildlife professional was until I almost went to college. And at that point, the only thing you really know is there's a game warden, right? The guy that drives around and checks your licenses, right? That's the only part of understanding wildlife related work that you have any understanding of. And I must say, I was probably just about that naive when I went to college. But one thing I did love was flying. I always enjoyed flight. I enjoyed the mechanisms, the aerodynamics, really more from an aircraft standpoint than from a bird standpoint. And then I had an academic advisor who hooked me up with a research project my freshman year, going out to Western North Dakota, studying golden eagles and prairie falcons, and looking at their distribution, and really just getting to know the species. And I was a freshman technician on the project. It was not I did not have any weighty responsibilities, but it really opened my eyes to sort of asking interesting questions, and really the science aspect of it. And I've always been a curious person, and so that was a way to trigger my curiosity. Birds were the thing I was, suddenly became curious about, and they flew. And then I studied things like falcons, which are these fantastic organisms that fly at dozens of miles per hour for the slow ones, and hundreds of miles per hour for the fast ones. So it isn't a short leap to think of jet fighter aircraft and peregrine falcons, and really hand in glove, because they really have some of the same properties. So it really did turn me on to birds early on in college, and that sort of snowballed year after year. And I've been working with birds ever since. I've worked on shorebirds on the East Coast, and forest birds on the West Coast, and prairie birds and forest birds here in Minnesota. So it's really been a lot of fun, just having general interests, and being able to scratch a curiosity itch with respect to the science part of it. So, and obviously my second love is teaching. So I've been able to sort of try to poke young minds and get them to think in ways that explore that natural world in a way they haven't thought about it before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and tell the viewers the unique species you worked on for your PhD.
So I worked on my study was funded by the forest products industry, actually, and they were kind of curious as to what critters, both mammals and birds, but I ended up working mostly with birds, were associated with managed forests in the Pacific Northwest. So I was in the coastal forests, coastal mountains of Oregon, and I worked predominantly with American dippers. And dippers are a fantastic. They're feathered trout. Let's just be right. So every fly fisher, a fly angler, knows that what a dipper is. If you live from the Rocky Mountains west, they perch on the rocks in the stream, and they jump into the water, dive under the water, fly under the water, walk along the bottom, picking up aquatic insects, and either eating them there or hopping back up on the rock and snacking on them there. They just have a fantastic, interesting natural history. They nest in balls of moss that they place on cliff ledges, or kind of glue to cliffs with a couple of techniques, or slip behind a ball of moss and push it out and make a platform and put their their nest on top of that. So I worked on those both my wife Lisa and I spent a lot of time watching dippers and looking at distribution and abundance and reproductive success and foraging strategies and what they feed their youngsters and what they eat. It's a great example of especially in science and in biology, how you never really know what today's education, how you're going to apply it tomorrow. My undergraduate advisor was the invertebrate ecologist at North Dakota State, and I thought, that seems like a mismatch. I'm a bird guy. I'm definitely developing this, and yet I'm working with this guy who does works on midges and aquatic insects, and I just ran with it. I mean, he was my advisor, and he was fun to work with, and he was a great guy. And but how is this ever going to apply to anything? Well, my next two graduate degrees were on foraging ecology of things that eat aquatic insects. Right. It wouldn't have never predicted it, but I was, well suited. So it was one of those things that sometimes, the things that you are passionate about just sort of work out that way, and you never know where it's going to shake out. But yeah, dippers, they dip. And that's why they're called dippers.
Nice.
But they're, as far as an artist goes, they're terrible. Right, Bros? They're just
I've never painted one, but
well, how's your gray palette?
Well, but their landscape is the reason I haven't painted them, John, is their landscape is complex to paint
and dynamic.
Yeah, moving streams, lots of boulders, shaded edges of the streams.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm up for it yet. So
fast flowing streams. Yeah. And all of this happens, like I said, in fast flowing streams that none of us, knee deep water, you couldn't walk through it because it's rushing past so fast it would just knock you over. And yet they go into the stream underneath the water, pop up on that same rock, have their snack, and away they go again. It's just fascinating how they're able to survive. And that's why I often call them feathered trout.
They also have a long, beautiful song, if I recall.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Very, very beautiful. It's been far too long since I've heard that song.
I haven't heard one either for years. So
yeah, they live in those fast flowing, rushing streams. So their song has to be both long and loud to be heard well by other members of the species. So it's a gorgeous song.
Yeah.
So it might not have been an early love, but it certainly is.
Well, John and I have shared, Swiderski and John, I would say, kind of opened the door for me to teach occasionally at Crookston. And we did have some very memorable field trips out to the Badlands of North Dakota. Kids got to see long-billed curlews, just a bird you don't get to see in Minnesota. They've been extirpated from here for 100 years or more. And, the camaraderie of young people with a couple of older people I can see why teachers really enjoy their work.
It keeps us young.
If the students are involved. Yeah, and that's why anytime, Trey, you're there right now with 2 daughters in college, a person, whether they're an artist, a physicist, a sociologist, whether you step onto a campus in the USA, there's an energy there that just lifts you up. I don't care how bad of a day you've had. It's, it's like coming home to a good dog. So it's always a good feeling to step on a campus. And I haven't been involved with UMC since I retired now. And I'd miss it. I definitely do. And because you get to know students and you do have an impact on their life, and that's a good feeling.
It's a lot like gambling, because you don't know where that impact's going to be. You kind of you invest in a lot of things, and sometimes you find out. Sometimes you get immediate feedback. Somebody will, as you're walking back from a field trip, say, that was really, that was incredible. I did not have any understanding. This was fantastic. And sometimes it's 5-10 years later when they loop back and they say, do you remember when? It's like, no, I don't. I'm really sorry, man. I don't remember that. In the sense that it was maybe something that we just, we do out and do our thing. And sometimes it's really impactful, and you just happen to catch a student who's just ready for that learning. And that's just really what's exciting about teaching.
The red gods often smile upon people that love birds, I think. I don't know how many times I had kids on field trips. There was a really memorable moment on our Timpanoukas wildlife area, which is 12 miles southeast of Crookston. Beautiful grassland, about 900 acres of mostly native grass. And we were on the north end. And I was telling the students about the love flight of a male harrier, marsh hawk. And because of the habitat they live in, if you try to court your sweetheart in the grass as a raptor, it's not going to work. I mean, nobody's going to see you. So how do you deal with this? Well, the male harrier does this incredible flight that loops like this. And at the top of these huge arcing flights, he does just a half turn with his brightly silvered wings and black wingtips, and then barrel rolls again back into his next loops. And I was explaining to the students when, maybe not one of the better students in the class said, "Hey, Ross, what's that behind us?" And here came a male harrier, I'm not kidding you, like 50 yards from us, doing his love dance in the sky. And these students were blown away, as was I. I mean, you just don't get this opportunity to see this up close. And then lo and behold, you saw the hen harrier in the distance kind of slowly flying along the grass. Down she went. Eventually the male went down to her. Did they have a marriage, make babies? I don't know, but what a great, it's just, unbelievable that something like that could happen to a bunch of kids who had never really understood prairie birds and the vastness of what the prairie used to be and how certain birds have dealt with giving notice for spring courtship. It's a remarkable ecology. And another time, just this will be it, but another remarkable one, we were on the Hall Road south of Highway 2. We had pulled over to look at some yellow-headed blackbirds, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a merlin screaming through the sky at about 15 feet above the ground. It was after a longspur, a sparrow family of some sort. This sparrow was so unnerved, it flew under the van and hid. But before it got to do that, this merlin went right between a student's legs after this bird, oblivious to all of us. It missed the sparrow and then, looped back out of sight. But, the kids are like, did that just really happen? I said, yeah, you just saw a speedster trying to get lunch and it didn't get it, but there's somebody under our van shaking in their boots right now because they were this close to being lunch for somebody else, and so what a great episode. No loss of life occurred, but a loss of life did occur. So yeah, I love that stuff.
And admittedly, sometimes there is a little bit of a loss of life,
Yeah,
occasionally you're on field trips and that bird does get caught right in front of the students. And it's like, wow, everybody
Yeah.
is just really impressed at how birds can do that.
And there's a painting rolling around in my head. It's been rolling around in my head for years, and it might get painted this year. It's a takeoff on a human saying, "Bad hair day." Well, this would be a male prairie chicken getting whacked by a peregrine with bad feather day. Maybe,
Yeah.
might not get killed, but it's lost some feathers. So that painting's coming together. It's funny how these things sometimes take years to come together.
So how many paintings do you have rolling around in your head, Ross?
Thousands.
How do you decide which one to do next?
That's the conundrum, John. When somebody commissions me, sometimes they'll get the commission 2 years later. Sometimes it's 2 days later. And it's all about what you're saying right now is if the things don't come together in my brain, it can't happen. It won't be the best I can be. I mean, that. Everybody has that feeling in life. So I think I do frustrate. I've got a couple that commissioned me 5 years ago, and I still haven't done the painting. Sandhill cranes over, parkland country of Kitson County. And I think it's starting to come together, but the moment's got to be right. It's sad but true. And in the end, I'll probably hand them the painting. They'll say, "No, we bought a different one." But that's what I deserve. But anyway, it's John. You asked. A lot of people that have seen my exhibits in the past. I remember one in Bemidji, the local arts critic. I thought it was the greatest statement for my art, but she said Ross Hier paints in a rather whimsical manner. And she didn't mean so much the style of my painting, but the imagery behind my ideas. And so many of my paintings come with a title before actually the idea of the composition. In the birds exhibit, there's one called The Regular Crowd. And it's a scene that we see now in Northwest Minnesota all the time, but 25 years ago, it wasn't the case. But the scene is a roadside with a deer carcass under the snow, 2 eagles, 3 ravens, an American crow, 2 magpies, and 3 chickadees. And the young eagle is giving way, or the old eagle is giving way to the young eagle, because if you notice, the crop of the old eagle is stuffed, and it's putting up a little bit of harassment, but it's going to walk away in my mind. And then the young eagle will eat, the ravens will eat, the crow will eat, the magpies will sneak in, and then the chickadees. But the best part of that painting to me is in the foreground in the snow are the distinctive 2 set tracks of a weasel. And they loop around out of the image and then show up again by the back fence post in the back behind these birds. And under one of the chickadees on a piece of barbed wire sticking up are just the 2 black beady eyes of a winter short-tailed weasel. And I did put that in the description at the gallery of that. Can you find the weasel? And I know a few people have found it, but that is truly what I think that art critic meant by whimsical when I make my images. So that's nature, How many times have we been alone in the woods and turn around and realize you hope it's a squirrel, but it could be a black bear, has been watching you, happens a lot.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, Ross, you've got about, is it 60 paintings?
I think 61 paintings in that exhibit. And a lot of that, there's a reason I had so many watercolors on hand, Trey, was I was supposed to have an exhibit in Fergus Falls last September. They asked me to be the honorary artist for the 100th anniversary of the Fergus Falls Game and Fish Club. And I did the painting that is going to be, I don't know if they're going to make prints of it for members but it's going to be the image for their 100th celebration. And then COVID shot that down and postponed it. So I had, a lot of waterfall stuff because a lot of those people are duck crazy like I historically have been. And so in the birds exhibit, there's quite a few images of ducks and, hunting ducks or whatever. And then in 2020, when the pandemic came, I just found myself, especially in the winter months, just having breakfast, maybe taking a nap. And I am retired out there, so not to worry. And then walking upstairs to the studio, and I hit a groove there where I was just painting so much and having so much fun that, it was karma to me that you, and I don't know if it was just you, Trey, or the entire Arts Council that came up with the birds idea for an exhibit. And I was approached by you to, be in it. And it was just a real blessing for me because exactly, birds are right up my alley, and I had a lot of images, and And then the hummingbird, for people that haven't seen the exhibit virtually or have gone there, there's 15 paintings of Ecuadorian hummingbirds in the exhibit. And those 15 are from a 2019 trip that I took to Ecuador, the only American with 15 Brits. It was a hoot. And a lot of the Brits were from the Blitz as children. They lived through the Blitz. And so that tells you their age. But I've always kind of been enamored with people from the UK. And I had just a total great time with them. And the bird life was amazing. And Ecuador has about over 150 species of hummingbirds in that country. And it's not that big of a country, but the richness of the Andes down to the Amazon and then down to the ocean side on the west has this great diversity of hummingbirds. And so when I got home, I thought, just as a personal project, I'm going to paint the 33 species I saw. And you've been kind of along with me, Trey, on that ride, seeing them once in a while. And
Yeah.
I finished 15, and that's been a great and fun challenge because I don't think I've captured them well, but they're iridescent. And if you're having them flying, it's really hard to make them look like their wings are moving like they do. So, but it's been fun. And I think they did add a lot of color to the show. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. And then real quick, Kristen, can you just say a little bit about the exhibit, that it is online, and anything people might want to know about that?
Sure. So there is a post on our website that talks about the exhibit. It's got all the information about parking, where you enter the building, what the hours of the exhibit are. We also have a link on that post to a virtual exhibit where there is an image of everything in the exhibit is in the video. So you can see all the pieces by watching the video. And we've got a TikTok of the exhibit. I think that might be on the on that post too. If not, I guess we've got it on Facebook. So it's a good place just to go and see everything in the exhibit if you can't make it to Thief River. Otherwise, I encourage everyone to go and see the exhibit in person.
Yeah. And that goes until the last day in April. I think it's the 30th, Friday. And then we'll be starting a new exhibit after that. But Ross, your exhibit is kind of divided up into different little sections. So you already talked about the hummingbirds. Can you tell us about the other sections of your exhibit?
Well, the other two distinctive sections are from when Leela and I went to Antarctica in 2010, which somehow put us on our seventh continent on our amazing planet. Wasn't something we planned. It just kind of happened that we're lucky enough to have done that. And so, John, you talk about paintings in my head. I mean, Antarctica, it's been 11 years since I've been there, but the beauty of Antarctica haunts me every day. It's a watercolorist dream world. You might have pink ice, green ice, blue ice, and then the bird life and the mammalian life it's like being on another planet. And so I had numerous paintings for that topic, just, laying around. And when Trey approached me about this birds exhibit, I decided to I think I ended up doing about 10 more paintings in the past year. And there's some unique birds down there, the giant, the big albatrosses and the petrels, and just fantastic. So the penguins, that's part of my group of paintings in the exhibit. The other thing I've always loved to paint is getting back to feathers. Yeah, mammals leave tracks, birds leave tracks sometimes, humans leave tracks. So you can say, somebody's been here or something's been here, but nothing leaves a track to me like a bird feather. Their anatomy allows them to flutter and land on things. If a human stepped on a passflower, the passflower would probably cease to be what we view as a passflower. But if a prairie chicken individual feather lands on the passflower, it came to my mind to paint a painting called Corsage for a Passflower. And that one is in the exhibit, as you know, Trey and Kristen. Whimsical, yeah, maybe it harkened back to high school proms when you'd get your data, a corsage to wear on her wrist or on her pinned onto her blouse, whatever. So that little group of paintings all involve feathers on something or individual feathers, things like that. And then the rest of the paintings are kind of a mishmash of landscapes and birds. I've got one called A Stranger in Cheyenne, North Dakota, which is the old elevator in Cheyenne, North Dakota, which is a very distinctive and beautiful elevator, not functional anymore, I don't think. But this painting has a human and the black dog walking down a snowy street past the elevator. And the stranger is actually just a tiny white image perched on one of the elevator downpipes. It's a snowy owl. That's the stranger in Cheyenne, not the human and the dog. It's the snowy owl. So a lot of people, I don't think, will even notice that little white owl sitting on that massive elevator, but that's where he ended up. So that group of paintings is quite diverse. Hunting scenes, paintings of decoys, paintings of individual birds, woodcock, American woodcock, several paintings of that species. That's about it, I think.
Nice.
Do you think if you went to a little wider camera angle, Ross, you could do the woodcock dance for us? No.
Thank goodness I don't know how to make the camera wider. I still can't fly, John, but
You could do the woodcock dance.
Yeah, good. You could too.
Sorry, among biologists, there's always a little good humor with the animal behavior contest.
I think painting is illegal on the screen, actually.
Kristen and I were talking about, this part of the region, this part of the world, it's like this bird flyway. And, I was telling Kristen, I don't know anything about this, but I know, all these birds migrate through. Can you two just tell us a little bit about the importance of this area and how the birds migrate through, and just anything you want to share?
Go ahead, John.
Well, I was going to say, we get lots of interesting birds coming through, and I think Ross alluded to it earlier. The beech ridges that sort of run pretty much from Clay, Norman, Polk counties, right? That it's just like a visual landmark that birds often have, I think, used as a way to help guide themselves north. And we get huge flights of certainly of sandhill cranes. Back in the heyday, it's probably still quite a number of years ago when I think their migration peaked. We would get 10,000 sandhill cranes staging right outside of on the Glacial Ridge, what is now Glacial Ridge National Wildlife Refuge, which is a phenomenal occurrence. But it was also kind of ethereal in the sense that they'd show up, they'd be there fairly short period of time, and then when the weather would be favorable for continuing north, they would all but a few hundred would just disappear in a day. And sometimes we'd get whooping cranes with showing up with them, and that's a fairly rare species. There are probably fewer than 500 wild whooping cranes running around, and I seem to remember one year I think there were 7 or 8 of them associated with the sandhill cranes out there. So it's kind of a unique opportunity that we get to see. Normally you got to head over to Bismarck to see whooping cranes. Trying to think about the other things. We get a huge pulse. There's so many little, so many other things that are I sort of accept as commonplace. We get swans that come through. It's a fairly short window, but a tremendous number of tundra swans that are heading to the Arctic to breed, and they'll stop over here in Crookston. And they'll stop in Crookston. They'll stop all throughout. But when you think about the Red River Valley, it's pretty flat. There's not a lot of water. So for waterfowl, places like the impoundments, like Agassiz Audubon, or up near the Snake River, they've got an impoundment up near Warren, or really almost any Red River Valley community that has a wastewater treatment lagoon has a beautiful retention pond that waterfowl hit this time of year as they're moving north. And people wouldn't even normally think of your wastewater treatment facility or a lagoon like that as a great birding spot, but it's actually one of the best around in terms of waterfowl, because it's the only water around that's not flowing very rapidly. So it's a fantastic place to check out. And I'm sure the birds migrate and hopscotch among the wastewater treatment facilities just because it's a great place to loaf and to rest for a little bit. I'm sure, Ross, you got any others that you'd like to add?
I've been counting chickens off and on the past few weeks, and I'd say tundra swans are peaking right now. I was out yesterday morning, and it was just near Marcoux Corner was just a cacophony of tundras, and the cool thing is now we have trumpeters also, and so you get the yodeling of tundra swans and then the bugling of trumpeters. It's just, I can't believe that we have such a thing. The pulses, I was telling Kristen before we came on the air, one of the main reasons I love where we live is these pulses of birds during migration. A week ago it was common or purple grackles, and they're still arriving in numbers, but in the last 3 days hundreds and hundreds of robins have shown up. I mean, the crabapple trees are just thick with them. And Leela and I walk our dogs, and there's crabapple residue from feeding robins all over every sidewalk, and the nearest crabapple tree might be 3 blocks away. Well, how does that happen? Well, I know how it happens,
Crabapples.
Yeah. And the other thing that had showed up yesterday, just from Friday to Sunday morning, were rough-legged hawks. And the rough-leggeds are a beautiful cream. The standard color is this cream-headed partially black-bodied hawk, very small feet for a raptor and a very tiny bill. They specialize almost purely on rodents, and they're one of the big hawks that can actually sit and flutter in place like an American kestrel, like a sparrowhawk, and look straight down in the same spot and hunt that way. But they're very distinctive to me in that they tend to perch on the far outer limbs of pretty spangly trees like willow brush or slippery elms or young cottonwoods. A twig that a red-tailed hawk could not sit on because it would bend it down. And so suddenly yesterday, I'm sure I saw 40 or 50 rough-leggeds in an hour. And these beautiful raptors are actually heading way up to the treeless area of the Arctic to nest, and they'll stay here for as long as the rodents are here and how that inner clock tells them it's time to move. And we get the same thing then in October and November. And last year, because of the lack of snow, there were rough-leggeds in Polk County well into December, maybe even January. I can't remember. But what a joy to see these visitors that fly thousands of miles to stop in our neighborhoods and our landscapes.
And the
Of
same
course,
thing happens for
bobolink,
those little. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, the bobolinks are a classic for people that get out into the prairie lands east of Crookston because they won't be here. They arrive about one of the last migrants to come up, very late. They're a blackbird in the blackbird family, and suddenly you've been walking on the prairie on a Wednesday and you come back. There was nothing there, and you come back Friday and there's male bobolinks bobbling all over. They do this little quick flight with their little bubbling call that they make, and wow, what a feeling of energy. And then just as soon as they're here, come August, they're one of the first birds to head back south, and they go a long ways.
Yeah, they go down to the Pampas, far southern South America. So
Yeah.
they're a big bird that flies thousands and thousands of miles.
Yeah.
And as Ross says, they make a twittering noise. I call them the R2D2 bird. For those people in my generation, we all remember R2D2 from the Star Wars trilogies, and that's exactly what they sound like. And if anybody who has not birded before walks out onto the prairie, you'll know it's a bobolink, R2D2.
That's a great metaphor, definitely. So,
Good. You know,
anybody that I've ever taken to the field and had a male bobolink bubbling by them, they just start laughing. I mean, how can you not laugh at this little guy? He's so into what he's doing. He's oblivious of you. And, there's a female sitting somewhere. Maybe she's laughing at him too. I don't know. Or she's going, yeah, so it's just the, courtship and the energy these birds put into life. It's nothing short of amazing.
What a male will do to impress a female is phenomenal.
Yeah. Totally epitomized by our local prairie chickens and sharp-tailed grouse, who spend literally 3/4 of their life either getting ready for or displaying for females. And like I said, I was counting chickens yesterday. I counted one ground that had about, I think it had 13 cockbirds on it, and 2 of them were like 80 yards from the center of the ground. And you're thinking, you poor guys, you don't have a clue as to what's going on here, and they're out there displaying, and no hen in their right mind would even give these 2 guys an eyelash look. It's just not going to happen. It reminds me of how inept teenage boys are, in high school. I mean, it's just, maybe boys are more sophisticated now, but I was not. And I realized why, you're dateless for years, Every group of birds has those guys.
Yep.
The courtship behavior is so strong. I just love sitting in the backyard when a group of grackles arrives. Fresh flight of grackles tends to be heavy to males, and they'll be in my oak tree, maybe 25, 30 grackles. And I was telling Trey this the other day, you see one dominant male and they make this kind of, croaking call. And when they do that, the males puff up like a big round, they look like a globe. They might rock their head a bit. Well, once this first male does this, the whole tree goes off one at a time. And the whole thing they can't help it. They're so tuned in and they're so full of testosterone. There's not even a female around, but they still have to do this little part of their full display. It's not their full display by any means, but just, again, getting back to what John said, males, they're trying to do what they're made to do, and that's pass genetics on. So they make a fool of themselves so much. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, I want to be aware of our time, and I kind of feel like we could go on for another couple of hours easily. I want to say something real quick that this bird exhibit is still going on for a couple more weeks. So if you get it, like Kristen said, if you get a chance, please try to see it in Thief River Falls at Northland Community Technical College, and it's also online. So you can check it out online, and Kristen has done all of the online galleries. Great job she's done. So that's a lot of fun to watch. And then our next exhibit, which will start in mid-May, is tiny art. So it's 4 by 4 inches, very small art. It can be any medium. And so encourage people to, if you'd like to submit to that, you can email me, let Kristen know. All that information's on the website. Kristen, anything else we need to mention before we close?
I would just say we're also accepting entries for the annual art exhibit. And the exhibit itself has been pushed out a bit. It's later this summer. So watch our website or Facebook for the dates. But we are accepting the entries now. If you want to submit.
Where is the exhibit this year, Kristen?
It's in War Road.
War Road, okay. Okay.
So I hope you'll submit something last.
Long ways away. War Road, I mean. Not really.
Okay, well, thank you so much, John. Thanks for being here, for being our little expert and sharing. For your good friend of Ross's also. And Ross, thanks so much. It's awesome to showcase you and your artwork. It's really appreciate you sharing your gifts with all of us. So thanks so much.
It's been a privilege, and thanks to the Northwest Arts Council and Kristen and you, Trey. Just a quick word. My oldest sister, Melanie, who's kind of been tuned into this exhibit virtually, she said, "You have so many great artists in Northwest Minnesota. It's just ridiculous." And it is true. From Fargo north, we're blessed with an amazing number of great artists, not just two-dimensional ones either, So thanks so much.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.